So we've done our data cleaning, we've done our GIS, and now we're ready to just do some styling. The first thing I want to do, which I did in the previous video, is just to make the background a nice shade of, I want to do very light gray, like something like upwards of 90, maybe even 95% gray, and just make the outline pure white. And we want hairline. There we go. This is I think I first saw this kind of gray background style thing on Wikipedia on locator maps. This was like 10 years ago, but I just really liked how clean and undistracting this looked, and so I've been using this in my maps ever since. Okay, now what about these actual location counts here? Okay, we definitely want it to go by count, and we want to do size because we want larger markers to represent more movies and shows being set in this particular city. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of the outline, and then what I'm going to do is make the fill a nice forest green, kind of representative of the Pacific Northwest. I don't know. So that doesn't look too bad. The problem now is with overlapping cities. What I can do there is go back into the symbol, make it about, let's say, 50% transparent, and apply those settings. There we go, that's much better. Now the question is, I've been using equal interval with 5 classes. Now, does that really make sense? I don't think so. I think, especially considering how few cities there are that have a lot of movies set there. So what I found out is, since the maximum value is 22, I can make there be 21 classes, and you can see that each symbol level is equivalent to an increase of 1. And this is starting to look better. So now actually the diameter of the circle is actually proportional to the number of counts that there are. So one sort of complaint that I have here is that if you look here, Moscow has 3, I believe, instances, and then Budapest has 1. But on this map, they look actually almost exactly the same, which is kind of problematic. I really, really wish that QGIS had a nice way of doing a square root curve rather than just pure linear, which is what we have here. Anyway, this is just too much effort for such a basic map, so I'm just gonna have it be proportional because whatever, it's not that important. I think what I will do though is make the maximum size a little bit bigger because only Seattle is really going to be that big. Okay, I'll do 10 and maybe I'll do 1.2 for the minimum size. Okay, yeah, that's a little bit better. Alright, so this looks pretty decent. I could throw this into Illustrator, slap on some labels. One thing that I really want to do though is let's go into Print Composer. Okay, so one thing I kind of want to do though is add another map, let's say here, which is zoomed in on the United States. There's just way too much detail in there and it'd be really nice to have an up close view. This is just time consuming. You can see the actual data processing and GIS stuff took like 5 seconds. This is the stuff that really drives me crazy. Okay, all right, whatever. That's fine. I'm gonna end up changing this in Illustrator anyway. So yeah, so now we have the United States up close. We can just export this as an SVG. We'll call it Vancouver.svg. I don't know what these options are. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I tried to load this SVG into Illustrator and it was taking way too long. And I think the reason is, as I showed you, the file size is not huge, but just the number of features, there were just a ton of features. I mean, every single little Pacific island, every island in Greece, Indonesia, whatever. So this is a good time to show you a technique where you remove every polygon less than a certain size. So you'll see right away that this layer that I have here, difference, if you select a single feature, it highlights the entire feature for you. But we're trying to get rid of all these little tiny islands. So what we have to do is go to Vector, Geometry Tools, Multipart to Single Parts. Now, this is the single part. So you click here, and now we can select these individual little islands. The problem is that in order to apply a size filter, we have to recalculate area, because all these islands still contain in the area column the area of the original polygon, which was the entire country of Greece. Vector again, Geometry Tools, Add Geometry Columns, just creates a new layer. So what we can finally do now is go into Query Builder, get area greater than 0.1 is a good size. So now everything loads much faster, and now we can create the SVG file all over again, and hopefully this time it should load into Illustrator. So now I'm going to quickly go over what I did in Illustrator to make the final map. I was hoping to do some sort of time lapse, but first of all, it just took way too long. The video size would be huge, and also it was a lot of sort of boring back and forth little adjustments that, well, I just don't think it would be very worthwhile. So instead, I'm just gonna quickly go over basically just what I did in general. So I loaded the map into Illustrator, as you see here, and the first thing I did was take the inset, which used to be here over Australia, and moved it off to the side. I just decided that I couldn't deal with the fact that parts of the world were being covered up, so I just extended the canvas and moved it off to the side here, which results in this weird sort of long shaped canvas. Another thing I did, if you see here, is I lowered the opacity on the 6 large cities, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So now that I have these two things, I added a title, and then over the course of a couple hours, I actually labeled every single city. And personally, I hate labels, or at least, I don't know, for some reason I felt weird labeling everything. I added lines, in case where, for example, here in Europe it was very bunched together, so I had to put some lines in there. And then I only labeled the 6 biggest cities in the US, because in the inset I would go in and actually label all the rest. But even in the inset I didn't label everything. I actually grouped them into these general areas and labeled them this way, just because there would be way too many labels if I were to literally label every single individual city. Plus, if people are super dedicated and really want to see exactly which city this is, for example, they could just ask me, or I'm gonna put the full data on my website and they could go through that and check it out. One thing I do regret is not having state borders here, and unfortunately that would just be too complicated for me to do right now. This is kind of a quick map. It's not really like a production quality map, so I'm not really interested in taking that time and effort right now. I think it's good enough. And the last thing I did was just put a little text here showing the top 6 cities. There's a tie between Portland, Oregon, and Los Angeles. So we end up with this very oblong but nonetheless interesting looking map showing where shows and movies that were filmed in Vancouver were set. Pretty cool, huh? So that's how I made my Vancouver movie map from start to finish. I hope you thought it was interesting. I hope you learned something. One last thing I want to say is I know that this data set is incomplete. I know that since I manually went through and looked up all the locations, there's definitely stuff missing. If you have any suggestions, if you feel like something's missing, please let me know. If I get enough of these suggestions, I will definitely make an updated version. So thanks, and hope you learned something.